facilitator for the second session. Today, we are honored to have a remarkable speaker who embodies leadership, innovation. Please join me in welcoming Naik, a CEO of TransUnion Africa, a renowned expert in digital and technology transformation. With a distinguished career spanning over government and private sector, Lee brings a unique perspective on harnessing technology for meaningful change. As a former managing director of Accenture, he drove digital strategies, complex transformation, programs for leading organizations. Lee is a respected thought leader and an after-sword speaker and a media commentator on technology and innovation. His achievements include being named one of LinkedIn's top 10 global voices and receiving the Standard Bank Rising Star Award. What's even more impressive is that Lee shares his insights beyond the corporate world and through his LinkedIn platform, where he thoughtfully discusses topics such as leadership, mental health, and gender equality, among others. We are thrilled to have Lee share his experience and expertise with us in shaping the conversations for Africa's trailblazers. Please take that word back and please research what it means for you to be a trailblazer. And Africa, just don't limit yourself to South Africa. Think broadly. In the blue bag we say, Africa is our home and we drive her growth. Always take that into consideration when you do things. And with all that experience, it's surprisingly he doesn't look a bit older. I guess his corporate side of the world is kind to him. You should see my leaders. Over to you, Lee.
Good morning, everyone. How's it going? Hamokelo. My goodness. Hamokelo actually works for me at TransUnion. So, and why is she in so much pressure now? So, and I can't tell you all my stories, because she's here. Well, welcome everybody, and welcome to what is an amazing setup, right? So I was thinking about it earlier today. There are 200 of you across 4 rooms right now. Do you guys get that? And there are 800 that applied. You guys got that? And I was asking myself this morning, okay, there's 200 of you, and do you actually have you figured out that you're special?
Of course.
But that's just her, and you guys are laughing at her. You know you're special, right? But why are you special? And we're going to talk about over the next hour. I'm taking all of my hour, Andrew. We will skip the break if needed, but you will be here. You with me? We're here to learn. So when you figure out why you're here, then actually today will be the blessing that you thought it would be. But you got to know for yourself why you're here. And I was speaking to Lincoln Marley earlier today, and I was talking about what we've achieved. He grew up in KwaZulu, I grew up in Chatsworth. And today's conversation, it's less about me being the CEO and all that stuff Asati said. That's not important. It's important to know that in this room today, the youngest person is 29, the oldest is 35, and you are the future. But it's only important at the end of today when you realize that you are the future. And so I'm going to give you some of my lessons from my journey, and all that stuff that Asati said, it's interesting, but it's not useful for why you're here. You're here because you want to be the leader that your parents hoped you would be. And I hope so, right? My job is to help you realize those tricks that you didn't learn at universities like Henley and the schools you went to. That's the plan. How does that sound? Also, all the slides are extremely pretty with no graphs, right? So you got to learn the stories, and the stories are what will make you powerful. So when we start any conversation, so I spent 20 years at a company called Accenture, and when you talk about getting people to want to make change, it was always start with being negative. So make them feel bad. In fact, we call this thing, put them into the valley of despair. So let's do that. Let's make you want to cry first, okay? So let's do that. So first thing to note is that right now the unemployment in South Africa is 32%. Not great. Sub-Saharan Africa as a region, around 4%. So we suck, really bad unemployment. There are 8.2 million people today that are unemployed in South Africa. There are further 3.2 million people that don't even want to apply for jobs. They're like disheartened, they're discouraged, right? So over 40% of adult South Africa either doesn't want a job, right? Or they don't want to get the jobs that are available. It isn't because they don't want jobs, it's disheartening. Our GDP is 1.4%. And in my business, I look after 8 African markets. Some of the markets are growing at 9% GDP. As a continent, Africa is growing at close to 4% GDP, more than most continental regions around the world. And so we think about the circumstances we find ourselves in. We are low GDP, high unemployment, one of the highest crime rates in the world, right? One of the highest fraud economies in the world, right? And we have the highest inequality in the world. There's actually a number for this. The number is 0.63. It's what we call the income Gini, which is a formal measure of the disparity between those that have and those that don't have. They may ask, like, Lee, why is it so high? Because the disparity between the rich and the poor was by design. It started in the year 1948. So don't be negative about that, because it's only been 31 years to get to where we are. And for me to be here, for you all to be here, tells you that it's possible that we can be more than someone thought we would be. But you've now gotten here, and the question is, how do you break out? So I grew up in Chatsworth, as I mentioned, and in the time that I grew up, we're extremely poor. Grew up in a typical RDP house, never slept on a bed until I was in university, right? And that's not just for Lee. Most people you know grew up like that. And I was talking earlier to Lincoln, and I said, I was born in 1976. So I look younger than Asati, but I'm not. Right? I'll be 49 this year. And it's more the skincare routine, Asati. You know? It's not. Stress is high, but it's your skin that you focus on. But when I was growing up, though, in 1976, I can't tell you that I knew about the uprising that happened in October, right? Because the uprising happened in June, and I was too young. I can't tell you that I knew Nelson Mandela when I was born. I knew poverty, I knew drugs, I knew crime. That's what you're surrounded about. And so one of the things that I want to tell you is, it is bad right now, it was bad then. And one of the things to figure out is, how do you break out of your circumstances? I've told you 5 things today to make you negative about South Africa, to the point where you want to quit and go to Canada and Dubai and all these places. But when you think about breaking out, the first lesson for today is, how do you think about breaking out when you know no heroes? I didn't know Mandela, didn't know Steve Biko. I knew what bad looked like. The first lesson for today is, I found in my mother an accountability partner that I didn't know I needed. Now listen, it sounds negative and very morbid, but my mother almost held up a mirror of reflection. And that mirror told me the person I'd be if I didn't get my act together. You'd be dead on the streets, right? You'd be a drug addict. You'd be working in a factory. Not that these are bad things, but it's the destiny of the path that's easily trodden by many people. If you're that poor and you can't afford to go to university because your parents all quit to start working at a much younger age, something has to change. And as an uneducated person herself, my mother's job was to hold the mirror saying, that's where you're going to go to and become the stats that we expect you to be. What do you do to pivot, right? So the first thing to figure out is these circumstances, these cards that have been dealt to us as Africans. It's very easy to say, this is the shithole that everybody thinks it is. Or we can say, no, it's not. And one of the things I tell my team all the time is that it is very easy for us to become negative. And I'll equally tell people, there's a bunch of stats that should make you positive. Right now, Africa makes up 17% of the world's population. by the year 2100, will make up 40% of the world's population. Our population will have grown by 2.2 billion people, right? Our GDP today is growing faster than most countries around the world, in spite of our corruption, transparency, leadership issue. Imagine if we get our act together, guys, right? Now, Africa is a continent of a very young population. Our population is only 19 years of age on average, right? We suffer from what we call a youth bulge. You are part of the bulge. And what it means is that we're in the exact right moment to have this conversation about the role that you should be playing to help us. What I tell Khamagelo and what I tell everybody else is, Africa will be successful in spite of all of you. But you can choose today to be a role player in making it successful in your lifetime. I'm not sure whether you'll be here in 80 years' time, but it's going to be amazing in 2100. What are we going to do today? What choices do we make as young leaders to be part of that? And that's what I do every single day. You can ask her in the break. I refuse to slow down. Because to be a CEO is a fickle thing. I can be changed tomorrow, right? Maybe my skincare will be not a thing forever. Maybe I'll look old tomorrow. But when I'm here today, I have a moment, a chance to chat to you and say, will you join us in breaking out of our circumstances and setting the tone? But you got to find your Mrs. Naik, your Auntie Pat, to help provoke you and say, listen, when I become complacent, smack me. Keep me on that straight and narrow. Does that make sense, everybody? All right. So, both growing up and today where we are, we have to make some choices that are unpopular, right? So not doing drugs, not hanging out with all the cool kids, going to school. Like my routine is very simple. You go to school, you come home, you do your homework, and you stay out of trouble. Right? Stay out of your mom's way. Because if you're in your mom's way, you get a hiding and you start again. And then when we were younger, we actually had in my area, we had our first public library. So then we're allowed to go to school, you do your homework, you eat your lunch, and then you're allowed to go to the library. And one of the things I did was, at some point I'd read every book in the library, right? Like 5 books a week. And it's really interesting because when you start to read, you acquire knowledge. Asati was asking me what I do every morning. Every morning I start by gathering knowledge. It's as much as I can. And I start at 4 a.m. when Asati is sleeping, right? At 4 a.m. I'm gathering knowledge. And as I'm driving to work, I'm processing knowledge. And by the time I get to the office, I know everything to start my day. Because a CEO has to know everything about everything. I don't know everything, but I have a point of view on this. So being relevant, when you hear this word relevant many times, it's a choice you make. Like everyone has no opinion. And someone says, actually, I'm special. I'm going to be an absolute rock star today. It isn't the choice of popularity to stand out. It's the unpopular choice. Everyone's waiting for someone in the room to tell us what to do. Why shouldn't it be us? So the fact that, and I'll tell you a really fascinating story. So when I was younger, so every Indian household, what's the choice occupation? Kids must be doctors, right? Not for most households, be a doctor. But when I was young, it's very interesting. When I was 10 years old, and I was quite a smart kid, it was the first time Chatsworth had computers, but not for the kids, for the teachers. They had a teachers training center, and they got these black and white, they call them monochrome for all the youngsters, these monochrome monitors they brought to the teachers training center. And just for one day, for a few hours, they collected all the smarty kids from all the schools in Chatsworth. They took us to this one teachers training center. And they had this little robot, which you can Google. It's called a Logo robot. It's a programming language, right? It was this thing on the floor. And what you would do is you'd go to this thing called a computer and you'd say left 10. And this thing would move on the floor, right? It's that's mind blowing. What the hell is going on? And then we left. And you're back to your reality, living in your RDP home, doing what you did, playing on the street, reading your books. But that provoked me to think about, okay, that's interesting, but could this be the future? And it's interesting, I never actually got a computer until my final year of university. But I decided then as a 10-year-old, I would do computers. I was so committed to doing computers that I learned to program on pieces of paper without actually seeing a computer. read all the books, and I found a bunch of guys. And then my mother said, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" She went to the high school, and she asked the person that headed up computers whether these youngsters could come on the weekend and use the high school's computers, right? To be relevant is a choice. Is it meant to be easy? There's no chance. Would you need supporters? 100%. Could be a mother, could be your best friend, but being unpopular is what makes us stand out. And I'll remind you, you are 50 out of 200 that's here. Each one of you is competition for each other, you know? So you're all a bunch of cacti, right? But this is one that wants to be the one that flowers, like choose me, choose me, choose me. And it's really interesting. So when I started my career, I actually had a scholarship. I did get a scholarship to go to university, and it was from Telkom back in the day. And so I made this thing about, I wanted to figure out how I wouldn't screw up. Because my mom said, don't screw up. I worked too hard for you to screw up. So in my final year at university, I actually asked for vacation work. And because Telkom had just started doing bursary, there was no vacation work. But I kept hassling them. They got me a job in like downtown Durban at the time. And I realized by working there that I hated that job, right? And so when all these companies come to university, at that time a company called Anderson Consulting, which was the forerunner for Accenture, came by. And they just offered a dream job, right? For a guy that had never left Durban, you got to go to America once a year, right? You got paid overtime, like that's amazing, right? And you got to do different kind of work. And so I said to myself, you know, there's the easy way, once again, to do this IT job for Telkom, or I could choose to interview. I interviewed there and then on campus, and that's the only time they hadn't interviewed, and I was with Accenture for 19 years, right? So choosing to stand out is the difficult part. Choosing to stand out makes it something that not everybody wants to do. Why must you do it? So fast track to my first day at Accenture, you always have like a start group, whether you're at the blue bank or the red bank or the telco, it doesn't matter. But you always have a start group. And the company I worked for were like some really smart people. In my start group, there's a guy that had a PhD in nuclear science, like doctors and this. And I'm like, okay, I knew I was smart, but like everyone is smart. And then you realize a company like the one I worked for has 850,000 employees, where everyone, smart is like normal, right? And you ask yourself, like, how do I stand out? Because Mrs. Naik is saying, dude, don't screw up. Don't embarrass us. Like, you got to do better all the time. And it's very interesting. I got to work on the second election, not in 1994. 1994 is like a done deal. Like, we know who's going to win. But in 1999, we'd won the contract to build the election systems. But this is like super cool. Here's the Electoral Act, and the government says, build us elections, then they leave the room. There's an empty building. And so the strategy, the technology, all the stuff that you use, we designed from scratch. And in fact, like I coded stuff that hadn't changed for 14 years. And somebody called me and said, listen, do you remember how you did this thing, right? So I was part of that team. And it's super interesting that when we were there working with the smartest people in the country, working on this election, there was this one day when an opportunity presented itself. I said to myself, okay, I may screw this up royally, but if I step up and I get this right, it could change my career. And so I won't give you the very specifics, but we're about to meet Thabo and Becky in the morning, not me, this IEC, but we found an error in this thing, right, this thing. And it was a big error to the point where they had said every person that's available are going to work the night. There'll be McDonald's and Red Bulls. We're going to figure this thing out. And so we were committed. Free food, as a youngster, you'll take it all day long, right? And so I'm trying to think to myself, okay, this is a very manual, tedious thing. All had been given, like, that's your allocation, do this, do this, do this. And I thought to myself, there must be a smarter way. Surely with all these smart stuff. And I said to my boss, listen, I have an idea. Can I just get 20 minutes to try something out? And I said, if it's wrong, I'll work longer to get my file fixed. But if I get this right, I think you could save the day. And so it's interesting because I wasn't even a developer back then. I was like a tester. But my mother said, trust nobody. So I had learned the coding language that the developers using because I didn't trust any of them. Because if I was testing, I was going to check that stuff, right? And now I knew a new language for coding. And now we had this problem that wasn't regarding coding. But I thought to myself, I know this thing. could I fix this problem? And this problem was a big problem because there was a deadline to print all these voters' roll things, and we had to fix it. And so I asked my boss for permission. He said, Lee, listen, if you screw up, you're going to be in so much trouble. I said, well, listen, that may be the case, but how often will these unique opportunities come across? And I sat there, and I figured it out, and we stopped everyone from working. And this thing that I wrote, this piece of code, fixed everyone's problem by the time the morning came. Now, the specifics aren't important, and I can't even share it. But that opportunity allowed me to stand out from that crowd. For the next 9 years, that partner of this company, I became his firefighter. When there's a problem, where's Lee? Send Lee, send Lee. I actually got my first promotion from analyst to consultant within 18 months, consultant to manager within 18 months. And I was the youngest partner at Exchange. I met partner at 31, right? And it's not because I was the smartest guy. I was smart, but I saw the opportunity. It said, it's difficult, it's unpopular. What do I have to lose? And my boss said, listen, you'll have to do the manual work like everybody else, but the opportunity was there to step out of your comfort, to step out of what felt so easy. Does that make sense, everybody? Right? If it was easy, we'd all do it, but it's not easy. So this picture is an amazing picture because it's meant to look cool and calm. This is meant to look easy. And the skincare is like just not the real thing, right? But the reality is that you got to work really hard to make it look this easy. And the fact that you're here, you just got a ticket to the game. This is by no means a guarantee of success for any one of you. It's not meant to be easy. You're going to be influenced by people that want to hold you back. Like, why don't you quit? Why don't you go to this country? You know, you don't have to work so hard at the bank. There are much easier things to do. Why don't you like own a bakery or do something creative, right? If we want to see Africa in our lifetime, realize its potential, we need to realize it's not meant to be easy. You know, I had a really good week from a business perspective. We had like an amazing week in Kamakelo. And I was chatting to my boss, doing my performance review yesterday. And he asked me, like, you know, how's the euphoria? And like, you know, post-success, you have euphoria. And I said, I think I have PTSD. And he said, like, what do you mean? I said, you know, it's amazing, but I've already forgotten that because my mother said, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. It's like in my mind, I can see my mother telling me that as a 10-year-old, like, you know, I've made these sacrifices, don't stop. So we did something so significant for Africa. We're going to make a dent in Africa's exclusion problem, literally. And just the 1-minute version is, there's 16 million people in South Africa today that can't access financial services. What we launched a week ago allows us to include another 1.9 million people. It's never been done before, right? And that was like 2 weeks ago. We did something even more amazing yesterday. And I said to my mother and I said to my boss, but we're not done yet. So you are 50 out of 200, out of about 8 million in the country, out of 400 million on the continent that have the potential to lead us. But you need to leave here saying, I choose to lead, right? Or you can choose to be average, right? You guys getting it? Yeah. Right? Your boss doesn't WhatsApp me, you know. This is me talking to you because if you're going to write something, write down this. Relevance is a choice. It's my choice. I can't tell you to be relevant. You must want to be different. You must want to be special. You must want to be the person that your parents dreamt of. And it's not meant to be easy. Like that opportunity that came earlier when I saw that problem and I stepped up, there are many times when these opportunities will knock on the door. It's disguised. It kind of feels like that analogy, you know, one of these church type stories, like you don't know who's knocking at the door. And only you can recognize when the opportunity is there. Because for most things, once you've done a job for 2 or 3 years, it's actually quite simple. You start to blend into the euphoria, like my boss said, of being successful. But you then become complacent, right? It's so easy to become complacent. And if you work in a big corporate, you can sit in a parking lot for 5 or 10 years and you see like a youngster coming by and bypassing you, right? The people that have gotten to where we are, the Lincoln Marleys, the Lee Nikes, Olisa, who's in the next session presenting right now, they all found that opportunity and they said, I will take it, right? It feels difficult. I may actually fail, but if I don't do this, who's going to do it? Do you get it? Right? And there are many such chances. I remember, because I've only had 2 jobs, I'm really experienced in this job thing. I've only had 2 companies in my whole life, 20 years and 9 years. Another time in my previous job, we had this really critical problem, right? And it's very interesting. I was summoned to this room by all these senior people. And like senior people, the clients there, and the guy said, listen, they're looking at the screen and saying, we think we know what the problem is, but there's no one around that can fix it. But we all think that you're the best guy that has a chance of fixing it. And now you're going to tell them, like, guys, don't choose me. Because if I screw this up, we're all stuffed. And the guy said to me, listen, we need this done. You're our only hope. Will you try? If you get it wrong, it's fine. But if we don't do this, the consequences are big. And I thought to myself, once again, I could walk away and maybe we'll survive. Maybe there'll be a press release of negativity. Maybe someone will be upset. Someone gets fired. But it won't be me, right? But once again, that crazy knock on the door that says, will you try, right? And they literally said, if you get it wrong, it'll be okay. But we want someone to try, right? Will it be you? Will it be today? Because that moment won't be there tomorrow. Because once it's fixed, the problem is gone, right? That opportunity is gone. And I tried. I got it mostly right, actually, right? There were some issues. In fact, after I'd fixed it, I'd actually fixed it, but I left another problem there. And I remember we had these walkie-talkies for this specific client. And we had like all these code names on the walkie-talkie. And I got summoned, like, come here. And it wasn't a big thing, but we fixed it again. And within minutes, that small noise was gone and the solution was done. And once again, a new set of leaders saw that when there's a challenge, not everybody is quick to walk away. Few will step forward and say, I'll try. It's easy to get it wrong, but it's actually easier to walk away and not even try. You guys getting this? It's a burden to be the youth. It's a burden to be a young leader because you're the future of Africa. This point I made about relevance, this point I made about Africa being successful, you can quit today and leave this thing saying, listen, it's fine, it's someone's problem. Lee said Africa will be successful. 100% agree. There's nothing you need to do to fix Africa. Success is not our destiny, but you could choose to be a part of that success. It's a personal choice. Do you guys get it? You can choose to be average. I'm giving you permission. Come say, hi, my name is Lee and I choose to be average. You get it, right? It is a valid option. It's one of the doors of choices. But you're here because you want to come to this academy and say, provoke me to be more than what everybody says I can be. Surround yourself by people that allow you to have the opportunity. Put your hand up and say, can I try? That's what you need to do. And these are my lived experiences. These aren't textbooks, right? You all have stories like the ones I'm telling. How many of you are prepared to tell your stories? Asati has them, you have them. Are you sharing with each other to help propel them up? Or are you trying to be successful by yourself? Are you giving people the opportunity when you've had so many, right? Leaving them behind doesn't allow us to move forward. So, this goes into the point of finding clarity. So, when I woke up this morning, I was tired, honestly. So tired. I've had a really couple of weeks. In fact, I said to one of the speakers outside, in the last 6 weeks, I've been in 4 different countries. But I can't allow myself to be negative. I can't allow myself to be low energy. If I came here crying, like, oh my God, guys, you should call someone, at least crying, right? It's a choice. It's a privilege to be here right now. But I found clarity. So it's interesting that if you do find clarity, if you know, when I started this conversation, I said, do you know why you're here? I said, you probably don't, but when you figure it out today, you say, this is why I'm here. And maybe it won't be today, maybe it's when you're driving home, maybe it's tomorrow. But I promise you, hand in my heart, when you do, it'll change everything about how you show up. I recognize that standing here allows me to convince 50 people. Maybe it won't be all of you. Maybe 10% says, you know what, I'm average and that's good. But if one of you feels that you can be hashtag more than, then you can join the clarity. When I close my eyes, I can think of my family in Chatsworth. I could think of a dad that quit work so his family could have money, that never had credit in his lifetime. I can find, amidst all the negativity, a light of possibility that I can shine. But I can find it myself, because remember when I get to work and Khamakelo sees me, I'm never negative. It's like, why are you happy all the time? Because it's not my job to be happy, it's my job to set the tone, right? So what is the tone that you're setting? But how do you find your clarity? So I'm going to tell you a bunch of things. And I'll try and recap before they cut the mics off and tell me to leave the room. But the biggest thing I'll tell you from today is you've got to find clarity of purpose. Sounds fancy. But when you wake up in the morning, you realize that it's not a job. When you figure out what the opportunity, whether it's a bank, a telco, a small business, whether it's your own startup, a bakery, you think about what you do. Like when I think about the job I have, I believe that Africa could be equal. I honestly, genuinely believe it. There's nothing you can do to dissuade me. Nothing. Everything I write and talk about is like the person right now. I'm never negative because I can tell you what it is to sleep on the floor. I can tell you what it is to be said no to. So if you tell me Africa sucks, I'll say, no, man. Not my Africa, because in my point of reference, my context, we've come so far. And we're only 31 years at this. Do you guys get this? You can say, I'm a young leader, I can move to Canada. Go ahead, because I want you to be happy. You do that. But if you be one of the 50 people that says, I have an obligation, I have an opportunity to be more than, then actually we could achieve something great together. Okay? So clarity of purpose. Think about that. Biggest lesson from today. So it's interesting. When I was 39, so I'm 49 now. When I was 39, I know it's true. I'm 49, huh? It's true. It's the skincare, I tell you. But when I was 39, I was actually early January. We have that post New Year's, like, should I get thin? What should I do? Walking on the treadmill. And actually, it asks you to put your age and your weight in on the treadmill. So I was asking myself, like, do I put in 39 or do I put in 40? So, oh my God, I'm about to be 40, right? And so that was like a really remarkable year in my career, because in April that year, I started receiving phone calls from this recruiting organization. It's like, no, we have got this job for you. And like, I kept cutting the call because my loyalty should never be questioned. I'm a loyal guy. And this guy was as committed, right? He just kept calling, no, we've got the perfect job for you. You've been identified, blah, 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 blah. This guy didn't stop calling for months. Like from April, he just didn't stop calling. And like, nobody thinks of a credit bureau as being a sexy thing. It's like, oh my God, we say no for a living, right? It's like no one calls you and says, hey, Lee, amazingness, right? None of it, no one does that. But as I started to think about the job I had, I'd made partner when I was quite young. I'd been a partner for a long time. I was in the exco of this big business. I was even on the succession plan to be the CEO. And at some point I realized it was becoming too easy, right? What was great was now good, and what was good is now becoming average. And I said to myself, there's a reason why someone is provoking and calling me. So they called me for the first time in April, right? And I refused to quit. I refused to leave. But I entertained the conversation because the adamant said, there's something here. I actually resigned on the 2nd of September. That's how long it took me, April to September. I only started in Jan the following. I was like, I don't understand this thing. Don't tell the guys this, right? But like, I didn't want this thing. But then I figured actually, for me to create greatness for myself, I had to give up everything I was good at, right? I was really good at. Everyone knew Lee Naik for that thing. All that stuff that Asati read, there's a lot of stuff like that. But that's what I was good at. Was I really as a 39-year-old going to do this for the rest of my life. Surely there's more that Mrs. Naik dreamt of for her young boy in Chatsworth. Surely there's more to do that we had to. And so one of the biggest things to think about as a young leader is, and you're not that young anymore. Young is 21, 29 to 35, right? We may have to give up what's becoming easier to choose relevance, because relevance is a choice. It's your choice. It's my choice. I chose to walk away from something I knew for 19 years. Rock star, everyone loved me, right? But I had to choose to walk away, not because I needed to walk away, I was good to stay. These consultants, they stick around for like decades, right? And you do really well. But was this my destiny? Was this the end of the story? No, it was the middle of the story. But I had to figure out for myself what was possible. So in August of 2016, I actually flew to Chicago because they were so annoyed with me. They said, listen, why don't you want to come work for us? And so they flew me to Chicago and they said to me, listen, why don't you interview the Global Exco? Because clearly we want you and you don't want us. Come meet all of us, then you decide. And as I met them, I actually realized that these people wanted me because they were like me. They wanted to change the world. And I was then convinced. In fact, my future boss said, listen, I've flown you up, put you up in this hotel. If you aren't impressed now, actually, we don't actually care, you can just go, right? But I did enough work that week to realize that actually I could amplify the impact I made in the world, in Africa, if I took it. And I chose that day to walk away. And it's a good thing having networks like this. You must look after your networks, because to make that choice to walk away, I had to call some really, really important people in my network. And they kind of helped me confirm that this was a hard thing to do, but it was the right thing to do. And they coached and even mentored me on how to approach resigning. Your boss will tell you, I'm the counter. And they said to me, it's like blood money. Just say no and walk away, right? But to walk away from everything you know, it's a really difficult thing, because the choice to be average, the choice to be complacent is the easier, popular choice. To be unpopular is the choice to be relevant. Are we starting to get this relevancy thing? So I chose that path and I came to this organization. Now I must tell you, this thing about being hired, a lot of words in these job descriptions, right? It makes it seem really amazing. But actually the truth is that there's a reason that somebody goes after looking for a leader for like over 6 months and says, I'll wait 4 more months for you to start. And so I did make a choice to come to this business, a business that was then around 117 years in existence, started in 1901. So I joined in 2017. And so I decided that what was great in my previous job was now just good. But if I took this role as a leader, I could create greatness, not for me, greatness in society, greatness in the world. That's what I strived for. And so that's why I got to TransUnion. When I got to TransUnion, it is what I thought it would be. They wanted somebody to help lead the charge of unpopularity, because popularity was being average. Some of the people that worked there for over 40 years in the same business. So when you think about what we do, average is what they expect you to do, right? Greatness, it's a calling. Greatness is a provocation in which to do this. In my first year, I made massive changes. I changed the entire leadership team, right? Took out hundreds of people, because I was clear that we will not stand in the way of greatness. We will make some choices. And the word choices is important, because my relevancy, our relevancy as a business, would require us to be a choice. And why it is important for this business is that in the first 90 years of its existence, it actually was the only service provider that did what they did. So it's easy when you're the only person that does it. Now suddenly competition's there, and we're playing the same playbook we played when we were the only player. So something had to change. So if you are going to change, ways will have to change in you. You can't do the same stuff you did to get here. You do a whole new bunch of things that you've never done before. Is it going to be difficult? Absolutely. Will it provoke you? Absolutely. Will you fail? I have no doubt. I've had some stellar failures. In my first year, I was in the headlines of the newspaper saying, our systems have failed. When I say when we fail, the whole country goes down. We connect to every big business in the country. And it says, Naik is CEO. I was like, oh my God. And I just arrived, but I'm there. You need to own it. And there's a bigger purpose. These little rocks in the road, that's just part of the conversation. It's part of the journey. We're not here for the rock. We see beyond that. And remember, what you see is beyond what others can see. You need to manifest what success looks like in yourself. You see that young black African child accessing finance. You see them as a CEO. You see the hope within them. That's the job. And so for me, I had to become the person that had clarity of purpose, to walk in and say, with all of these Jenga blocks that are broken, I see the recipe for greatness, and how to find the way to make that happen. So in those first couple of weeks, I had to figure out when I wake up in the morning amidst all this negativity. When I say negativity, there was serious negativity. I did my first engagement score. Engagement score is the pulse of the organization, 22%. That means you want to wake up and die, right? And so the question is how do I figure out how to lead a business where everyone's negative? True story. And so when I thought about what could motivate me every morning, I went back to where I grew up. I thought about my community. And I figured that I'm not doing this to be the CEO. I'm already the CEO, right? I'm here. What am I going to do with being CEO? What am I going to do with being a leader? And I said, what if I could solve a problem that matters? What if I could make it better for my community? People that were said no to their whole life. And today there are 16 million people right now that are being said no to every day. There were more when I was growing up. What do we do to provoke the change? And I thought to myself, there's one problem that I want to solve in my time as a CEO, because I could be taken at any time. It's a fickle, fragile thing. And I chose financial inclusion, Africa's biggest problem. If you search me on LinkedIn, if you follow me, that's all I talk about. All I talk about. Because it's Africa's biggest problem. And if you come to our building, there's a massive banner on the 9th floor with a picture of an African child on the continent, and it says TransUnion, solving problems that matter. So that was my mantra. It's on my Twitter, background. It's solving problems that matter. That's what I do, that's what I do, that's what I do. Because if I believe it, you can believe it. But I have to believe it on a good day and a bad day, because there are more bad days than good days as a leader. Getting that? So what is your problem that matters? Is it personal? If it's all about making money, then you know what? You can get money anywhere. Don't chase money. The fact that you are here, if you tell people you came to this academy today, you've already got more money. People will give you more money. But it isn't about the money. It's about you realizing there's a bigger purpose for you as an African, and we need you to realize that you are the future. There's a reason that we sponsor Rising Stars South Africa. I was chosen as a rising star in 2015. I won, I got the trophy. I'm a rising star. Today we sponsored because I have to give back. Someone saw me and said, listen, you can be more than. It's now my job as a citizen, listen, should I create the platform for all of you to do that? We all give up time on a Saturday to come here because we're going to find a way to get you to believe that you could solve a problem that matters. So a couple of things to leave. So I told you earlier there's 3 things I want you to take away. It's more than 3 things, really, but the first was clarity of purpose. If you have clarity of purpose and you come to work every morning, then you can help other people see your light shine in the midst of adversity and negativity, right? Number 2 is creating followership. Followership means surrounding yourself with people that choose to follow you. So the teams that you lead today, the teams that you're in today, are they aligned to who you are, where your heart is? If I tell my current leadership team to follow me, I'm changing strategy, they will 100% follow me. They chose because my hearts are connected with their hearts, right? If I tell them we are pivoting our strategy, they will choose to follow me. Now, this is quite provocative again, because the people you surround yourself with today may not be the people that you surround yourself with tomorrow. They may be the very people holding you back. In our ambition to create success for yourself and our country and our continent, we will need to have clarity of purpose, number 1. Followership allows us to create something called leverage. I can do so much as one person. If I had 10 people doing that, and they had 10 people doing that, today I've got 800 people working for me that I hope are connected to my clarity of purpose, our clarity of purpose, and our vision. And if I can get just half of them to do what I think will solve this problem, then we can amplify our success. Does that make sense? So followership allows us to create leverage. Very important word. Leverage amplifies our individual success. Everybody with me still? No one falling asleep? Right. This tree, right, is an example of steadfastness. This stuff is not easy. Because you can leave today and still say, listen, that dude was on something, right? I'm going to choose to be average, and once again, that's your choice. But this is meant to be difficult. Negativity, criticism from your family, from your friends, not going to the club, staying at home, doing another degree, associating yourself with people that aren't popular. Your ability to be calm is a superpower, right? You know, Batman should be a favorite superhero because he wasn't supernatural. He created his powers, you know that. He made the choice to do things that made him stand out. He didn't come from kryptonite. Local dude from Chatsworth, right? He created a way of showing up as a hero, but he wasn't born a superhero. He chose to be a hero. Calmness is something you will need to navigate this path. Clarity of mind, conviction will be key to that. So, 3 things: clarity of purpose that allows you to wake up and motivate yourself. Followership, choosing who you associate yourself with to give you leverage and amplification. And the third thing is culture. One of the things I learned when you have an organization that had a 22% engagement score is that we need to topple these Jenga blocks. I actually broke all structures regarding engagement. Took all the leaders that were part of the problem out of the system and said to the people, you own the culture. You want a great business? Why don't you co-create it? So even today, I lead nothing from culture. I sit on committees, but the people get to choose. If you're unhappy with the culture, then create the culture you want. So if you're the person that's dragging the culture down, if you're saying, guys, you know, do what I do because I'm always right, then you are a problem, right? There's 16 million people excluded. There's a whole bunch of leaders that want to be more than. You can see yourself as competition, or you can see yourself as a group of people that could lead us into this future we want, right? This culture you design in South Africa is one where that says by design we are separated. An income Gini of 0.63 says we are separate by design. You guys are saying, oh, that's my competition. Her shoes is too fancy. Like, where did she buy it? Maybe I should buy those. That's interesting, but that's very fickle. It's very materialistic. We have a greater purpose. If you create the culture that could foster this ambition, that allows us to deliver on this potential, it changes everything. Clarity of purpose for yourself allows you to show up differently every day. Choosing how you show up, who you surround yourself with, allows you to gain leverage to amplify what we can do as leaders. And breaking down the silos that prevent us from coming together allows us to create a culture. This is the 5th year that my business is a top employer. Our engagement score is 87% today, right? And it's because, thank you. Didn't want the applause, stay humble. But the real point to make is that we do this because we are entrusted with making Africa a success in our lifetime. So, last slide. Last slide is that you will know that you've changed the world when you feel this difference. The difference is not your performance score. It's not your bonus. If you realize that success is more than just about you, then actually you've realized that the world can be a better place, that you have a role to play. So I've given you a bunch of things today to take away. Of all the things I've said many things. These are all like amazing points, I believe. But I would leave you as a young leader with one point, that relevancy is a choice, and it is your choice. And I hope and pray that you will make the choice to be relevant and you will make the choice to stand out in a crowd today. So follow me, email me, send me a smoke signal, but you can count on me to help you if I can. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Lee. That was a mouthful. As you can see, he's the one that prepped this week while I chose the outfit. There's a book I'm reading, and there's a quote from it. It says, it kind of aligned, and it had nothing to do with him. It was just one of my stakeholder bosses. It says, if you are not relentlessly fixated with relevance today, you would be ruthlessly threatened by irrelevance tomorrow. So that's what I'm taking out from this. So this kind of aligned. We'll take 2 questions because we're kind of over time. You can ask Lee other questions in the Q&A, right? There'll be a Q&A session. You will be joining us, right? So you can take your questions there. We'll just take 2 questions because we're over time and want to give you a break before the Q&A session. We already have a trailblazer there.
I thought we're not taking lunch. Lee, thank you so much for your presentation. I think there's a lot there that sits. For me, I think one of the biggest questions I have is and maybe it's a contribution as well to the accountability partner. I think a lot of us want to be great leaders. I think a lot of us want to do great things, but a lot of us don't understand the importance of accountability in terms of improving the product, in terms of improving yourself, and essentially we see it as a stumbling block to success. I want to just ask you, how do we sort of change that narrative? How do we change the perception around accountability? And I say this looking at what is going on within the country, you know, in terms of our leadership currently, etc., in terms of accounting. Just one last point for me is that, you know, you mentioned as well, you know, how you are, I guess for me, what I saw when I saw the tree that's being blown away, there's a concept called anti-fragility, which really talks to how winds blow, and in that blowing of the wind, you find that the tree sort of bends and grows calluses and stuff like that. So what are some of the things that you could say would help a person in terms of bringing those calluses and strengthening those areas of weakness as the wind blows, so that we find ourselves rooted and we don't find ourselves maybe, you know, becoming pompous, but also just grounding ourselves? And what has worked for you in terms of that grounding? Because I think, you know, there's a lot that you could be pompous about, but even as you stand before us, you're so...
Thank you. So a couple of things worth noting. It's important for you to figure out the difference between accountability and responsibility. Everyone can be responsible, but one person's accountable. In this notion of what we call a RACI matrix, there's always one A, many R's, many C's, many I's. And maybe that's the point I'm making. Go and figure out what it means to be the A. A is for accountability. And accountability means you're accountable for the success. But if you can't feel that success when you close your eyes, if you can't articulate the bigger picture to your team, how can you lead us into the light? So maybe that's the point to take away. In terms of your point about the tree and the calluses, all those fancy words we're using, I think it's important to keep humble and surround yourself with things that not make you negative, but realize it is not done until it's done. So our government back in 1994 said that we want to have a better life for all its people. I subscribe to that, right? And I believe that until that's done, we're not done. And so you keep reminding yourself the euphoria of success shouldn't replace the humility that our work is not done. It is a choice to not just walk the fame, but to come back and say, I've left people behind. There's 16 million adults left behind today. You will have to choose to go back and get them. You can keep walking, but if you choose to go back, that's what keeps you focused and sturdy, that the obligation is on you to help Africa and South Africa be a success. I hope that makes sense.
Last question? Yeah.
We'll take two more, but be short and sharp, guys. Don't do what you did. One question. Two ones. Just one in the back.
All right, cool, thanks. I lead a team of a total of one person. And when you lead a team in a small business, sometimes you grow emotional attachment to the people that you work with. How do you measure and almost navigate that line of not being too emotionally involved and understanding when the time is right to break away and to almost nurture a relationship versus breaking away from it? Because sometimes it can be detrimental to the productivity of business.
They say that familiarity breeds contempt. Have you guys heard of that, right? So, like I said before, whether it's one person or 100 people, the leader's job is to understand the bigger picture and what success looks like. I am undeterred as a leader for big business. I know exactly what my success KPIs are. Same applies to one person. If you realize that you are being measured on these outcomes as a small business, whether it's revenue growth, whether it's margin growth, whether it's number of customers, whether it's attrition, whether it's upsell, you need to understand the what and worry less about the how. How is the ingredients that come together in a certain recipe? But you measure it on the success. How does it taste? How does it feel? What's the revenue? And if you start to get too emotionally involved, like you've said, you forget why I'm here. But nobody ever fires somebody for being happy. You get fired for missing revenue targets, missing your KPIs, missing your milestones. So I'd say juxtapose the familiarity of building culture. But what I didn't start by telling you point number one is build culture. I said point number three enables point number one. But my first thing was clarity of purpose. What is your clarity of purpose as a small business? What is your role? How will you get measured? And the culture, the team you have, whether it's one or whether it's two, must enable that. But when you start to forget one, you start to slip. That's when the complacency sets in. Familiarity allows it to slip. You miss deadlines, you miss KPIs, like, oh my God, I've had a bad day. There's no bad days as a leader. There's a board meeting, there's results. So keep focused on what the true measure of success is. Okay?
Thanks, Lee.
You could ask me at the office these questions.
We have a different relationship in the business versus
Yeah.
here, right? But I have two questions and I want
No,
to
one question, choose.
It's two-part. I think it's related. Lee, please.
Okay.
The transition from execution to leadership is often what leaders or people that are migrating into leadership don't get right, especially when you have been an exceptional executioner, right? And you sort of relaying to us your journey about being an exceptional coder that learned how to code from a piece of paper. I'm pretty sure you've experienced in your journey having to migrate from being an exceptional tech developer, tester, to actually now leading people that were going to do that and imparting the vision. How did you navigate not being impatient with the people that you were leading to execute that, and how to impart the level of excellence that you wanted? But the second one is you've migrated between different industries, whether we're talking tech dev, strategy and technology, to leading a data business. How do we as young people build transferable skills that can help us move either from industry to industry or moving from a corporate environment into businesses that might be seemingly different from what you do in one to the other? Thanks.
Yeah, it's like a little booklet you've written there. So a couple of things, right? If you want to break out of execution, you need to realize that you're going to break out of execution, right? So I've chosen to be relevant. The other thing we don't do, after we've chosen, we don't create the enabling opportunity to allow us to build more skills. So if you want to go from this level to that level, we know we want to be that level, but we haven't asked that person that I desire to have their job, what their job's about. Like, I had a person the other day that says, listen, I think you should promote me. So my standard response is, why do you think I should promote you? And the response was, I'm a really good person. I'm a really good person. You didn't do the work to figure what the role's about. So it's interesting. If I had a board, I'd draw and say, your current role, exemplar behaviors, how am I doing? The new role, exemplar behavior, now put ticks and crosses against them. Most people can't articulate the job you desire in your heart, because the job you desire has example behaviors, roles, and responsibilities. You're in a leader team, you've led nobody. If you mark an X, you're admitting to yourself, I don't know. You'll then seek out ways to make the cross into half a tick, into a full tick. That model is a very good model. Articulate for yourself the dream. If it can't manifest in your mind, you'll never get there. How do you tell yourself, I'm missing a skill, if you don't know what it looks like? So figure out what that looks like relative to where you are and build a pathway to get there. The second thing was what, Kamakhala? What did you ask me about?
Building transferable skills.
Oh, correct. So it's interesting. I have a view that says I can work in any industry as a CEO of any business. And I've literally worked in every industry because the delta between the industries is actually very, very small. Within 2 weeks, I can learn a brand new industry. Specifically in the world of AI and ChatGPT, the elements are all the same: culture, leadership, process, technology. You know, whether it is making bread or whether it's making PCs or whether it's banking skills, it's all very related. For example, the telcos now are becoming banks. The banks are telcos. You can buy iPads at a furniture store. It's interchangeable. I think what you have to focus on, Kamakela, is the base skills. Every leader, 80% is the same. The trick is to figure out what the 80% is. You must come back next year, same time, I'll tell you. Getting me done, right?
Yes, thank you guys, and let's go out there and purposely lead change, break new grounds, inspire others, innovate and be impactful. Africa depends on it. Thank you, Lee.
It's a pleasure.